So today we're going to be baking Pain De Mie, that French sandwich style loaf, that beautiful soft crumb. Now this is definitely all about the crumb, but for me the crust is just as important. So we're going to use a Pullman tin with a lid, just to make sure we get a nice even bake all the way around and not too much colour on the outside. Now I'm going to step slightly out of tradition and I'm going to use a touch of barley malt syrup in this recipe. Now not only is this a wonderful loaf, it's super versatile. Right, I will list the full recipe and method plus equipment and ingredient resources in the video description. The ingredients and the bake settings will be available for you to screenshot at the end of the video. So into my bowl I'm adding 265 grams of cold milk from the fridge. I'm going to follow this up with an 8 gram sachet of yeast. So next we'll add 380 grams of strong white bread flour. Mine's got a protein content of 13%. Follow this up with 10 grams of salt and 20 grams of barley malt extract. Now I've been playing around with this ingredient a lot lately and I am absolutely loving it. Bring this together into a rough dough. Now don't worry about getting it smooth right now, just make sure there's no dry spots of flour. Add 15 grams of butter on top of the dough, cover it and leave it out at room temperature. Once 20 minutes have passed, we can turn the dough out onto our work surface and incorporate that butter. Now it's going to feel a bit slippy and oily at first, but after a couple of minutes the butter will work itself into the dough. Now if you haven't got a bench scraper, then get one. My bowl scraper and my bench scraper are two of the most helpful bits of baking kit I've got, and they're the cheapest. Continue to work the dough for about 5 or 10 minutes until it feels smooth and everything is really well incorporated. Now the dough's not sticky, it's nice and manageable, so now we can ball the dough up using our bench scraper and then pop it back into our bowl. We now cover the bowl and we're going to leave it out at room temperature to prove. Now my bread pan is non-stick, but I always apply a little bit of vegetable oil or olive oil just to make sure that loaf doesn't stick, and these baking tins are excellent. I'll link to them in the description. Now as a reference point, my kitchen is 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the dough took an hour to prove. It's nicely risen, the surface feels under tension and it doesn't feel like it's going to collapse. It feels nice and strong. Now I'm going to use a little bit of vegetable oil on my work surface just to stop the dough sticking. I'm then gently going to work the dough out into a large rectangle. Don't go crazy, just spend a little bit of time gently stretching and manipulating that dough. Take one side and fold it over the centre third of the dough, and then repeat with the other side. Make sure the dough isn't sticking and gently but tightly roll the dough up, tucking in the ends every now and again as you go, just to keep things neat and tidy, and then when you get to the end you can pinch that seam closed. Tidy up the dough and gently place it into your tin. Cover it with the lid and leave it out again at room temperature to prove. Don't forget to oil the lid. Once the dough has risen to touch the top of the lid, you can bake it in an oven that's been preheated to 210 degrees Celsius or 410 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to bake for 35 minutes. I'll pop the baking schedule and temperatures up on the screen at the end of the video along with the ingredients. Now once it's baked, the lid might need a bit of a wiggle to get it off, and then you can take the bread straight out and leave it on a cooling rack just to cool down. Baking in the tin gives this loaf fantastic architecture and an awesome wavy pattern. The loaf is beautifully soft with a crisp crust which will soften off as the loaf cools down. The crumb on this bread is outstanding. Light enough to use for everyday sandwiches like cheese and ham, but it's robust enough to work well with grilled sandwiches too. Now as ever, if you give this a go, let me know what you think. Don't forget to check out my bread baking playlist at the end of the video. That's all from me today guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again very soon. Stay tuned.